Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting a like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from Majestic B7045 from the Am I the Arsehole and Am I Overreacting subreddits, and says, am I the arsehole for refusing to exclude my non-biological son for the sake of my biological son I never knew existed? My wife, 45 female, and I, 45 male, have 4 kids, 9 male, 18 male, 11 female. My 18-year-old son, let's call him Blake, fake name, is not my wife's or I's biological son. He's my best friend's son. My best friend tragically passed away when Blake was 7. My best friend was like a brother, and he was a single father. My wife and I ended up getting legal guardianship of Blake after my best friend died. Blake was 7 at the time. We got guardianship of Blake for a lot of reasons, but this isn't my story to tell. That is Blake's story, so I will not go into detail. But Blake is my son. I will always respect and honor his biological father, but Blake views me as his dad and he views my wife as his mum. My other kids, 19 male and 11 female, are his siblings. Things have not been easy, but Blake has grown into an amazing man that I am so proud of. Little backstory. My wife and I broke up like 6 weeks after our oldest son, let's call him Danny, fake name, was born, because the stress of parenthood was driving me and my wife apart. We were not married at the time, so went off and lived our own lives as single people for about a year. I was of course still an involved father towards my oldest son. During the beginning of my wife and I's breakup, when Danny was maybe 4 months old, I met a woman who was a lot older than me. Fake name, Lily. Me and Lily were never a couple. We met up a few times, never spoke to each other after that. Lily had a son, James, fake name. Apparently she thought James was the son of Lily's husband, who she is still with to this day, despite the fact that Lily cheated on her husband. I had no clue she was married, by the way. James took an ancestry when he turned 18. Had some results that didn't quite match who he thought was his biological father. He matched with me on Ancestry because I took a test a few years back. James got in contact, which obviously was a shock to me, but my wife and I have welcomed him into our family with open arms. Now I have 4 kids, 19 male, 18 male, 18 male, 11 female. I'm still figuring out my father-son dynamic with James, but he is a great guy, and I'm so happy he's a part of our lives now, despite how confusing this whole situation was at first. But James seems to have some issues with Blake. Blake does not know. I'm not entirely sure why James seems to resent Blake. Earlier today, James asked me if we could go on a father-son camping trip with Danny. I was of course very enthusiastic about a camping trip with my sons, especially since I missed so much of James's life. But I obviously mentioned that Blake is invited too. James got annoyed. He kept telling me that Blake doesn't have to be invited to everything. And he told me that it'd be nice for me to just spend time with my actual sons for once, without Blake. Now, that annoyed me. Blake is my son just as much as Danny and James are, so I told James that either Blake is invited or the camping trip is not happening. James is now accusing me of loving Blake more than I love him. So, am I the arsehole? So of course, after a tale like that, people were asking questions below. One said not the arsehole, but this entire family needs therapy. It's great that you're welcoming this new addition with open arms, but what do the people who raised him, Lily and stepdad, think, say or act about it? How does your wife feel about it? After such a monumental discovery about his existence, is James in individual therapy? And has he been given avenues to process emotions and feelings in a healthy way? OP responds saying, Lily says she genuinely didn't know James was my son, but I don't really speak to her. James is an adult. He contacts me and I have no reason to contact his mother apart from my initial conversation with Lily, asking why she didn't tell me. I think Lily and her husband are in a bad spot right now with their marriage. My wife, bless her heart, has been incredibly understanding. Of course, this was difficult for her, but she seems to be handling the situation well. Huntress replies to that saying, and that is probably your answer. Have you asked James how the man he thought was his father is treating him now? Because if it's not good, then that is why he has an issue with Blake. I don't think it's because Blake himself, but because you can treat him as a son when the man he grew up with as a father may no longer be, and he's hurting. It's easier for him to take what he's feeling out on Blake, but he isn't the issue. James needs help to process what he's feeling and going through. OP responded saying James is kind of reserved about that topic. I know he had a good bond with a man he thought was his father for years, but based on how reserved James is about the topic now, I would assume Lily's husband has been acting distant. Grim says, sorry for the questions, but I'm confused. Did something happen that caused James to have come to live with you? Was he not raised by his mum's husband as his father? Does James have a good relationship with his mum and her husband? If he was raised by another man, he should have similar feelings as Blake regarding his presumed dad. He didn't have to abandon his stepfather just because he found out that you were his real father, unless there are extenuating circumstances. Everyone else is focused on his relationship with you and Blake, but what is the nature of his relationship with the people that raised him? By the way, you're not the arsehole. Opie says, we actually don't live too far apart. James has been staying with us more because Lily and Lily's husband have been arguing a lot because of the situation. This arguing has gone on for months. James feels resentment towards his mum right now. And I get the impression that Lily's husband didn't react well to James not being his biological son, although James isn't exactly telling me much about that situation. Tiny Rage says, I think James feels threatened by the fact that someone you're not biologically related to has history with you, but he doesn't. I think all of this is complicated and traumatic for everyone involved. Not the arsehole for defending Blake as your son. Blood isn't the only thing that makes a family. I think it'd be a long road to figuring out your permanent family dynamic, and that may never feel fully settled, but James also needs to recognize that. 1. Blake isn't less family just because he's not related by blood. 2. Him joining your family doesn't give him a right to dictate your family dynamics beyond how he interacts with his members. 3. His role in all this isn't less valid for Blake being here. Sadly, I think these are complex emotions he's going to have to work through and come to terms with, and you as the adult in this situation will also need to help him with it and work through on your own as well. I'm sorry it's hard. Family is hard in the best situations, but this is even more complex than typical. Opie says, I think you're probably correct about why James dislikes Blake so much. Little Lamb replies saying, I think it's also that they're the same age, so James sees it as competing for the same type of attention. Are they similar or are they kids who've never been friends in any other situation? Is Blake better looking, more popular, athletic? James may be jealous of Blake if he sees Blake as better than him, or thinks Blake sees himself that way. One of my good friends has an 18-year-old son and an 18-year-old stepson. They get along okay, but one is popular, the other not, and it's a dynamic they have to deal with frequently. Opie says they are not similar at all. On paper, Blake should be jealous of James. James is quite popular, has multiple friend groups, is athletic. Major Specific says not the arsehole on the James thing, but I'm still stuck on the part where you left your wife when your baby was 6 weeks old because the stress was driving you apart. Honestly, have to eye roll at that. Yeah, 6-week-old babies are a lot to deal with, that's their thing. I wonder if your wife got to enjoy single life as much as you did. I'm guessing she was the primary caregiver for your newborn and infant. It's good that you seem to have matured by the time your friend died. Also, why were you not using protection when you already had an infant baby you were responsible for? Are there any more surprise children from your year of fun going to show up on your doorstep? You should appreciate a wife who will keep rolling with all this. Also, I hope you consider how all these changes impact your daughter and give her some extra time too. Opie says, my wife broke up with me. I will be honest and admit that I was not the best partner to my wife at the time. We went to therapy and we've gotten through that. I will always own up to the fact that I was not the best man I could have been at the time. My wife is amazing. I will never take her for granted again. Commenter says, I couldn't follow the relationship map. Who is who? Opie says, my wife is my wife. Danny, me and my wife's son. Blake, my best friend's son. My wife and I became his legal guardians after my best friend died. James, my biological son I never knew about. And Lily, James's mum. Wow, what an absolute messy situation, and I feel for a lot involved basically, because James has had his entire world turned upside down. The man he thought was his dad is pulling away. It seems like the marriage is on the rocks at the moment between his mum and partner, and now he's trying to build a relationship with his biological father who he never knew. At 18 years old, bloody hell. But the moment he started treating Blake like he was somehow, air quotes, less of a son, he absolutely crossed a line, because Blake's been through a hell of a lot as well. Lost a father, spent over, a decade becoming part of this family. But absolutely, OP's correct to be putting their foot down in this situation and saying that's absolutely not happening. You can be compassionate for James, can have his therapy and time, but it shouldn't come at the expense of Blake either. But OP did update the post and says, hi. So I only posted my original post yesterday, so I did not expect to have an update so fast. But I wasn't really able to respond to a lot of comments because so much has happened these past 24 hours. Unfortunately, this is not the update I wanted to give, but people were so kind to give me advice that I think it's only fair to inform everybody about what has happened. To answer a few questions, I saw Lily and her husband have been arguing for the past 3 months since James found out I'm his biological father. James never told me specifically how Lily's husband reacted, but I have a feeling that the reaction was not good. Prior to James doing an ancestry DNA test, Lily's husband was a great father to him. James not lived with us full time, but he often stayed at our house to get away from the arguing. Okay, now onto the update. After I made that post yesterday, Blake came and spoke to me about some incidents that have happened with James over the past 3 months. Unfortunately, James has some views that our family does not agree with, and Blake is a gay man. He is fine with me sharing this information, so he was a target of James's views, leading to some really rude interactions the past few months. The only reason Blake told me now is because he heard from James that James did not want to invite Blake on the camping trip. Blake had tried to keep the peace these last 3 months, bless him, but James not wanting him to come camping. Obviously, I was angry at hearing how James had treated Blake, so I spoke to James this morning and confronted him about this topic. He didn't even deny his views. He tried to convince me that I should kick Blake out of the house for this. I don't think this is the full reason he dislikes Blake, but this doesn't help James's resentment. As of right now, I've told James he's not welcome back in my house while he still holds these views, nor am I interested in forming a father-son bond with somebody who has these views. If and when James matures a bit, he will be welcomed into our lives again, but not right now. Blake deserves to feel that his home is a safe space. James is not welcome back here. I'm taking Danny and Blake on the camping trip because they still do want to go camping. I have empathy for James's family situation, but at the end of the day, I do not tolerate that hatred in my life. This was not the update I wanted to give, but that is the situation. Thank you all for your advice. Edit. I should add that James's views also include racism. My wife is black, Blake is black, Danny is mixed race, and my daughter is mixed race. I do think that James is more subtle about his racism in comparison to how openly homophobic he was towards Blake. But after I had a chat with James, I did realize he does also have racist views. A commenter says to OP, I'm sorry to hear that your biological son is a homophobe, but good on you for cutting him out of your life to protect Blake. I'm sure that was distressing all around. Sounds like Lily is a real winner of a person. Cheats on her husband and raises a son to be that way. Or her husband did, in which case I don't care that he was cheated on. Have a great time on the camping trip. OP says yeah, I can feel sympathy for James's situation, but I won't tolerate Blake being treated the way he has been treated the past 3 months. Not a Packers fan says you need to come to terms with the fact that his mother's husband was not a good dad to him. OP replies saying, doesn't mean I have to tolerate racism and homophobia in my house. Strange Life Dad says, how did James come to pass? If his father believed he is his son, it makes me ask questions. You seem to have strong moral values regarding honesty and all. How does that fit into having a relationship with a woman who is obviously in a relationship? Sorry, but from someone who was cheated on, I might not be as convinced about your values. You're absolutely right to stand up for your son, but telling your son he's not welcome after you are one of the reasons his family blew up. Opie replied saying, I had no clue Lily was married. I had no reason to believe she was married. The commenter replied saying, okay, thanks for the info. I am from experience always a bit suspicious, but I take it that you didn't know. Anyhow, your bio son went through something pretty traumatic, and it seems that his bio mother and not dad are not able or willing to help him. So maybe there is a way in you to at least give him a little bit of leniency. Quoting, he is 18, not 28, and at this age, they are anything but mature or grown up, and saying, I'm not saying you should ignore or tolerate his behavior, but instead of being the second adult in a short period of time to toss him aside like trash, you might be able to talk to him. Opie replies saying, no, I'm not helping a bigot who doesn't want to be helped. That would be sending a terrible message to my wife and my children. The Coltrane says, so are you just not letting him back into your house, or are you cutting him off completely? If you're cutting him off completely, how do you expect him to learn why his views are wrong, or deal with the huge amount of pain he's currently experiencing? To put it another way, have you really deserted him the minute there was an, admittedly big, issue? Opie says, because his racism and homophobia are not my problem. He's a grown man and I have to protect my wife and kids. He isn't willing to learn. The commenter replies saying, why should he learn anything from the man who is so openly and disdainfully rejecting him? I'm not saying welcome him with open arms, but it seemed pretty cold to cut him off completely. All you are teaching him is now that you don't think he is worth even trying for. Opie says, I'm not going to apologize for refusing to tolerate racism and homophobia. He made it clear where he stands. I would have helped if I saw he was willing to change. He isn't, so that's not my issue anymore. If he didn't want to be rejected, maybe he wouldn't have been racist and homophobic towards my family. Fun Wish says, so you're taking everyone but James on the trip. That was James's idea. I'll do something else with your other boys. You're going to push James further away. Opie says, yeah, well, James isn't welcome here anymore. One more commenter says, you did not know she was married. You did not know she got pregnant. You spent 3 months, often stayed at our house to get away from the arguing, and did not know he was a racist homophobe. What did you know? And why did this come to light in the last 48 hours? What have you been doing to get to know your new son that you did not know his values? He is comfortable enough to ask you to kick out your kid, so he was not hiding it. Between that and your refusal to even see any other point of view, either the second part of the story is incredibly coincidental or made up to keep you from being the bad guy. You can't be the bad guy. He's racist and homophobic, but you only learned that yesterday after posting. But why make up the second part? Why not delete the first one where everyone called you a bad dad? So this is either rage bait fiction or you're just a terrible father. You've raised a gay child in an interracial home and you did not have the wherewithal to vet the new guy enough to notice he's bullying your son. What utopian nation do you live in that intersectional identity are that safe? Then you cast out your son to that harmful environment that created the conditions you cast him aside for. An environment you are partially responsible for creating. So what is your responsibility to your new son? You have a responsibility to help mold him into a better man. You can do that while separating him from the rest of your family. Or is this just creative writing over the summer break? Opie replies one more time saying this only came to light because of the camping trip incident. Blake was mad about the camping trip, so he told me about the homophobia. And again, James was good at hiding his views. Quoting, then you cast out your son, and says, nope, I gave him a chance. He messed up that chance by telling me he will never not have the views he has. I have no legal obligation at this point. He also doesn't deserve my moral obligation anymore. I'm not gonna lie, I found the comments pretty wild some of the comments wild in that situation. I mean, they seemed way too focused on saving James while forgetting the people who actually needed protecting, right? And I felt for him up until that update, of course. It sounds like he has gone through a lot, whatever his views are or whatever, it sounds like he's gone a lot. But the trauma explains the behavior. It doesn't excuse racism and homophobia. The moment he started targeting Blake, especially in Blake's own home, OP's priorities had to become protecting his own family that he'd already built. And some of the comments saying, you should keep exposing your family to someone with these views. And in OP's words, not willing to change his views at all. You can't help someone who doesn't want help, and you certainly don't sacrifice your existing family because of it. But again, what an absolutely messy situation. What is your thoughts on this? Maybe you've got a completely different view on the matter. Would love to hear it. Let us know your comments down below, and let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from Protective Mummy G, who says, I the arsehole for the email I sent to a teacher about her, you have to include everyone rules, saying that was a dangerous lesson. My daughter is 12. I'm trying to teach her of creating and respecting her boundaries that are age appropriate. Teaching her that it's okay to say no to things that she feels uncomfortable with. There is a boy in her class who keeps bothering her and her female friends at recess. I've encouraged her to go to me or a teacher when this happens. My daughter told me a few days ago that in class, the teacher had asked the kids to form groups of about 4 or 5. She had formed a group of 5 with some other girls. Then the boy who had been giving her trouble at recess came over and said he was joining their group. Another girl said they already had 5, and he should work with a group who only have 2 or 3 people. He said no because the teacher had said about 4 or 5. My daughter then said they didn't want to work with him, and he should find another group. A few of the other girls agreed with her. He said that you can't exclude me like that, it's against class rules, and she said she didn't care. I heard about this from my daughter first, and the way she talked about it, she'd been firm but not unkind. But then I got an email from a teacher saying she wanted to call. She said there had been an incident at school where my daughter had excluded another child, and that wasn't allowed in her class, and she wanted me to have a talk with her about it. Her telling of events was the same as my daughter's. I felt proud of my daughter for her honesty. I sent her an email saying, Dear Mrs. Teacher, I'm sorry, but that is not a lesson I feel comfortable teaching my daughter. She's at the age where she's already having to deal with unwanted attention, and I'm making a point to teach her that she does not have to be around anyone who makes her uncomfortable, and that a young lady is able to choose to spend time with people who make her feel respected. I understand you already are aware Boy has been behaving in ways that she feels uncomfortable with at recess from our prior conversations. I think that is a very dangerous lesson to teach a girl. She has to include and be kind to everyone, instead of teaching her to be aware of when someone is not respecting her no and stepping out of the situation. I hope I didn't have to explain in too much detail why I find this important, but to put it briefly, I was brought up with the include everyone mindset. No exceptions. It taught me to ignore my own comfort level, and as I became a young adult, I became the victim of men who used my inability to say no to their advantage. It's a dangerous lesson, and no longer appropriate at that age. Thank you, OP. She emailed me back asking for a meeting in person with the principal. I'm preparing for that, but wondering if my email was too harsh. Am I the arsehole for my response to my daughter's teacher? OP responded to a downvoted comment on why this is important and said, I feel like a better lesson for future life is that if you're in a group, i.e. workplace, where someone has done stuff to make you feel uncomfortable, it is okay to not want to work with them. It's okay to ask your boss to reassign you or the other person, or to report harassment to HR, or even if HR and management don't address harassment, to leave the job. Your safety is worth more than professionalism. I feel like the "that's just life, there isn't a way out of it" kind of attitude is dangerous because harassment doesn't have to be a part of life. There is always a way out. I stayed at a job for way too long when my boss was harassing me, and I wish I had the lesson at the time of your safety and dignity is worth more than whatever they're paying you. Find a new job ASAP. OP then to a deleted commenter about on what the bully has done. OP quotes them saying, what has he done to make them uncomfortable? OP says, when my daughter and her female friends were having girl talk, they'd be embarrassed to have people over here. Nothing too embarrassing, just talking about kissing, which I guess is what passes as scandalous at that age. He hid near them and listened in for a while. He also chases a few of the girls around the playground even though they don't want to play that way and keep yelling at him to stop and leave them alone. Does he have friends? I'm not really sure. My daughter's never said either way. She said she tries to keep away from him, not pay attention to what he's up to when she can help it, so I'm not sure she'd know. Quoting, considering they're a group of 5 girls and the teacher is calling out the daughter for being exclusive, I'm inclined to think, without more info, the kid may be an outcast. I kinda get snooty girl vibes from this, but I could be totally off the mark. OP replies saying, my daughter really isn't that type. If anything, I think she struggles with standing up for herself without feeling bad about it afterwards. I'm trying to teach her it's not something to feel guilty about. Also, a serious question for you. What about my post gave the impression that my daughter was unreasonable or mean? It is a very concerning trend when I see that any time a girl stands up for her boundaries, there's some voice going, oh, but did she go too far? Was she really justified? Seriously, I'm curious. Can you reflect on what made you ask that? And really consider how a dangerous message that can be if you ask the same thing around young women in your life. A commenter says to OP, unless you're a doormat, you already know you weren't the arsehole. Now be very firm that you want that boy as far as possible from your daughter, and that you'll personally sue the school and the teacher if something ever happens. OP replies and laughs and says, as much as I try to teach my daughter about boundaries, it's still something I struggle with feeling guilty about sometimes. Hard to unlearn those wrong lessons, which is honestly why I want to teach her differently from a young age, so she doesn't grow up with that baggage. Lol. OP then updates the post and says, I reached out to the parents of the other 4 girls in the class who were involved. We all coordinated to go speak to the school administration together. They had similar views, thinking it was inappropriate for the school to expect the girls to work with someone who they're not comfortable with, and frustrated the teacher didn't do more to deal with the issues during recess that made the girls uncomfortable to start with. I ended up asking the school if we could reschedule the meeting to a time all the involved families could make, and we ended up meeting this afternoon along with my husband, another couple, 2 mothers and a father, along with a teacher and principal. We all presented a united front asking for the following. The school does training for the teachers on trauma-informed teaching methods and dangers of expecting young women to go against their best judgment of their own boundaries to be nice. Instead of include everyone, the kids should be allowed to respectfully set boundaries and taught to respect each other's boundaries. The school addresses harassment in class or at recess and doesn't enable it to continue. We went to talk, and I think it went a lot better having all the parents join instead of if I'd gone alone. The teacher and principal apologized, and the principal agreed to look on resources how to better navigate the balance between being inclusive and not forcing kids into including someone who's crossing a line with them. Thanks a lot for all the amazing advice in the comments. I cannot believe how much this blew up, and I'm so grateful to everyone who replied with advice and support. And honestly was getting pretty emotional hearing how the lessons I'm trying to teach my little one resonated with other women, whether they're mums too or have been through some of the same struggles I have. I'm completely with on OP on this, and I think good on them. I actually think she highlighted something schools still get wrong. Include everyone is a great rule until someone's boundaries get repeatedly ignored. Then it stops being inclusion and starts teaching kids that someone's feelings matter more than your own safety and comfort. And in this story, her daughter wasn't excluding just some random classmate because he was unpopular or whatever. She was refusing to work with someone who'd already been, hassling her and her friends. I think it was good on OP that got the other parents involved at the same time instead of treating it as some sort of personal dispute, because that probably had a big influence on the school to actually change things rather than just treating it as some in air quotes again, overprotective parent. And hopefully that school genuinely does change its approach, because teaching kids to respect boundaries is fucking super important, just as important as teaching kindness as well. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Again, maybe you have a different opinion on the matter. Always fascinated by all the different replies we get. We're all human, we all have our own thoughts in the end. So let us know your thoughts down below. And just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being here. And hopefully I'm going to see you in the next one. Take care and much love.